Welcome back, fellow druids. We're doing a live full circle tonight. I'll pretend that hopefully somebody's going to actually pop on here to chat along with me or follow this live. It'll of course post afterwards as a video for everybody to watch though. So, pardon me. Haven't gone over this in a while, but I'm your host, Chad, Cheddar Caveman, everything that's out there. This is full circle. So you may notice I've been putting out small tidbits of videos, or smaller, shorter videos on specific topics. This one's going to be a specific topic too, but it's a bigger topic. So I thought I'd do a live show. I'm going to still, from occasion, do the live show, but also, I plan to try to get some regular content coming out, so that way I can record it when it's a little more convenient for me and stuff. And I think the small snippets make YouTube a more compelling platform. Anyways, what I want to talk about today, and I don't want to wait too long to actually get into talking about, because there's a lot of potential topics here, is looking at the ATC and the lists and some of the statistical breakdowns that we've been provided. Big thank you to Dave, who does Conflict Chamber. Phenomenal to be able to get basically lists were due on January 1st, and on January 2nd we had lists. So that's pretty phenomenal, really, when you think about it. Anyways, the other nice thing that he provides us with is since he's got all the numbers and statistics and stuff here, or the values here, he's able to compile some statistics and put a small graph and stuff. So if you want to check that out, if you go to conflictchamber.com, it should be the first link right now on there. It's event number 30, I believe, on his website, and you're going to be able to check out the same statistics that I'm going to talk about. So, so real quick, I'm just going to do a real quick rundown, but the most populous faction being taken at the event is Signar with 17 players, and with the least being Convergence with 4. And really, I would say, aside from the representation of Legion being only 7, so that's the second lowest, I would say this is actually a pretty good spread of factions. You got Signar at 17, Crix and Circle tied at 16, you've got Grimkin and Scorn tied at 15, Retribution and Cato at 13, Protector at 12, a tie between Trollbloods and Mercs at 11, Minions at 8, Legion at 7, and Convergence at 4. So it could be a little better, of course, but that spread is pretty tight as far as the different, given the number of teams, the number of players. I would say that's a pretty good representation. Also, just a caveat, I'm doing this to go over, I think it's an interesting topic. I think it's a topic people find interesting. But let's remember that not everybody is coming to this event with the same intentions. Some people are coming to the event because it's a fun format and they live close, or it's a fun format and they don't live close, but they still want to do it. They want to play games with their friends. There's a lot of reasons, and then there's also the people who are the tournament players who are trying to get that spot on the WTC, or the Canadian team who's trying to thwart all of America's plans to do that. So when we see these number breakdowns, just realize that it tells us some stuff, but realize that some people what they're playing maybe for different reasons. That's really all I want to throw out there. So, anyways, those are just the statistics. That puts Circle tied for second most popular, which I think is good to see, a little bit of a rebound from what we saw at WTC. Again, like I said, I do think as we go through the list and stuff, we'll see that some of this is, and I think some of what you see internationally, even with this, is going to be what faction do people want to play now, and how do they feel about their faction, and do they even have access to another faction? So I would say, like, most players who have Grimkin probably have 2 factions, but they may have just now been sort of played it enough, and there's a few things. I think some relevant numbers are seeing Scorn numbers up and Legion numbers down. I think that's pretty telling of that Scorn is in a great place right now. You know, seeing them high on this list is really nice, because even with some of those other caveats, we didn't usually see that. And seeing Legion list low is a little bit abnormal for what we would have expected throughout the game. So, you know, I think we see, you know, if we see Legion bounce back up, I think Convergence is fine at 4, given the size of the faction. Grimkin at 15 is pretty phenomenally high. I think over time we'll see that flatten closer to probably more than the Convergence numbers, but you know, in the Minions range of numbers. Minions is probably in a fine spot, like I said. So anyways, so let's look at some statistics for Circle. You know, you can go over all of these individual statistics yourself. You can go over the ones, I don't know how much we're going to talk about non-Circle factions, primarily because I'm already worried that I can fill up a pretty considerable amount of time talking about just Circle. But we'll see, I might be wrong, and then we'll loop back around. At any time that I'm talking about this, if you do happen to be in the chat and you want to throw a question my way, I'm trying to keep an eye on it, so that we can discuss as it makes sense. So anyway, so in Circle, if you click on the Circle Ouroboros breakdown, what you'll be able to see is a chart of the casters that are taken, a chart of the theme forces taken, and then the total numbers of model/units that were taken. Excuse me, a little misleading perhaps, in that the one thing it doesn't do is combine min and max units, because Conflict Chamber registers them as different units basically. So keep that in mind when you're sort of trying to figure out how much you've seen of some of those. So anyways, to talk about the Warlocks real quick, we see Bradigus as the most taken Circle Warlock. So that is a huge change, obviously, a lot of which can be probably considered to be due to the changes to a few small changes to him, as well as the changes to the Wolds in general. So I think that has really brought him into a place where he's a really good caster. He's a really good answer to armor. He has a really strong alpha. So 6 players brought, and keep in mind this is counting the total number of instances they showed up. So you know, everybody brought 2 casters, so that's gonna adjust these numbers somewhat. So 6 players are playing Bradigus. Next, tied at 5, we see Unatu and Balder2. I think seeing them in this spot's not terribly surprising. I personally think Unatu is the best Warlock in the faction. I have an episode coming out where I talk about her, or I did have one come out. I'm forgetting how I scheduled those. It may be tomorrow. Balder 2, I think, is just very strong. +3 armor and not being able to be moved, along with the rock wall. He's one of those casters where, in the hands of somebody who knows when and where to put those spells defensively, combined with the strong, either there's a lot of ways you can do it, but to take those Wold Wrath, and a few things, you have a very powerful question that you're able to ask, and one of our strongest answers to all ranged armies, if you can play it well. So no surprise there. I'm a little surprised only 3 players opted. So now we're going down. 3 players opted to play Kruger 2. That's the same amount as are playing Mosar. A little surprised at the Kruger 2 numbers. Maybe slightly surprised at the Mosar numbers, but I think he's been gaining a lot of traction lately, so that's not too surprising. We have 2 Chromac 1s, 2 Chromac 2s, and 2 Kaya 3s. I would say Kaya 3 is somebody I expected to be a little bit higher. Chromac 1 and 2 being represented by multiple players is good. Would say numbers at the WTC don't really suggest that we would see that, but I think they're both a lot better than a lot of people have probably considered, and Call of the Wild being out gives them a lot of potential. I think Kaya 3 is basically, I think the numbers for Kaya 3 and Bradigus kind of indicate to me that when people were building lists, they looked and they went, we have 2 synergy casters, and they now feel that the Wolds are actually superior to the Living Beasts, or at least more people feel that way. I think there's more to it than that personally, but I think that's what these numbers at least indicate to some level. Then we see there's forecasters that we only see one instance of throughout, and that is Wormwood, Balder 1, Grail, and Kruger 1. And some surprises in here. Kruger 1, I think, is still strong in Devourer's Host. I know the person who's playing it. I know he's had a lot of success with it. I know he really likes playing the Tharn. He's playing the same list that I played with it. I think he saw me play it. I saw that Colin Hill was playing it. You know, be that as pretty strong. Grail hasn't really gotten a lot of traction yet. I actually think he's decently strong. I do think there's a couple small tweaks that would really take him from being like in the range of somebody who wants to go out of their way to excel with Grail will have a good time, to like he's a main player for our faction. He's just like right there. Balder 1, pretty generalist caster, but so not necessarily surprised to see one of those show up. And I think this might have been an alternate too. I don't know how that works out. Wormwood, though, one instance of Wormwood is, I would say, a pretty big deal. When you look out there, I mean, if you looked at the numbers even from WTC, you see, I think Wormwood and Una were tied for the most taken, and now we only have one instance of Wormwood. And I don't know if that means people are now, I think it means a lot of things. I think, one, there could just be some general, let's call it burnout on people feeling like they have to play Wormwood. I think the themes are in some ways, he's still good in them, and I think that he can be built to be played in basically any of the ones that he has access to. But I think they're not as immediately strong, basically. I think that the ranged game that we're being that is being presented for Circle to have to play into is now very different than when the edition first rolled out. When we first started seeing play, I mean, Baldur 2 was strong back then for the same reason, but when we first started this edition, we had things like Kara Sloan, who was very problematic, and your options were basically play Baldur 2 or play Wormwood. Kane 2 was very strong then. You see things like Nemo 3, who's still strong with the range game. Osian had Deadeye at that point, so we were seeing a lot more of him. And I'm kind of blanking on a couple of them, but there's a few more ranged armies. Most of anything in Khador, and now some of those are still around, but the fear of like dealing with the gun line that can just see through stealth, or the gun line that is going to ignore clouds, or the gun line that is shooting so far that Kruger 2 can't handle it, or the fact that for some people building Baldur with living beasts or in a certain way was not compelling. And I think a lot of those things have sort of like circled around, and so people don't feel like they have to play Wormwood to deal with the meta. And thus he has reduced. I don't know if that's good. I don't know if that's bad. It's interesting to see. I would not have expected him to be only taken once in a team event like this. I've personally gravitated towards playing a few other things because I've felt like when I've played him that it's just been really awkward for me for the most part. And I may go back to him at some point and give him a try. I think he's still a really neat concept, but I'm personally onto other things. So yeah. Anyways, so that's the layout of casters. I think it's pretty interesting. Notable. So there's some that we don't see here at all, and I think that tells us a few things too. We see neither of the Morvanas. We do not see Kaya 1 or Kaya 2. We do not see Tanith. And I think that's everybody. Just sort of going through mentally. Let's see, we see 2 Krugers. Kaya's accounted. Chromax accounted. Baldur's accounted. Una's accounted. Bradius, Wormwood. Yeah. So no Morvanas, no Tanith. And only Kaya 3 of the 3 Kayas. That's a pretty interesting situation to look at, too. I think the lack of Morvana 1 is unfortunate. I know a lot of people are pretty mopey about her, but I actually think that she has a lot of potential, and I think her potential is going to increase as the Crix change becomes more relevant and infantry continues to be the order of the day. I think the amount of RFP people are playing is going to go down. And as a result of that happening, I think both of the Morvanas will increase in viability. Not by any means like that's a 100% lock, but I do think that that's the case. I think Morvana 2 is very difficult to build a compelling list for right now. Morvana 1 to me, though, is the caster where there's a few ways you can build her where you can just grind games out, where with regrowth and the rest of her kit, if you're playing that into any light armored lists, they're just not going to have, you're still going to have your full unit of blood trackers or druids or whatever you opted into at the end of the day with her. So we'll see. She may resurge. Kaya 1, no surprise. Nobody's really that high on her right now. Kaya 2, a little bit. I think that scenario is pretty rough on her right now. She does not want to spread out. Her feet doesn't incentivize spreading out. She doesn't want to play infantry. I think she's a strong... I think she still has some strong options, but I can see why other options are being played ahead of her. Tanith, to me, has been one of the most interesting mysteries. For the last... We basically stopped seeing Tanith at the end of 2016. More or less once... so Wormwood Tanith was kind of like the pairing du jour for Circle back at the beginning of Mark III. And a lot of that had to do with Wormwood being so popular that Tanith was a good answer to Wormwood because Scarf sells Griffins. The list with her was you'd play like 5 Griffins and a couple heavies and some Sentry Stones. And this was pre-theme, of course. And a few other things. And because you could cast so many primals on her feet, you could get with Scything Touch, if you could cycle it correctly or position it correctly, those Griffins would hit pretty hard. And that was one of the ways that we were able to combat like some of those armor bricks that were out there. And then we used Wormwood, kind of like people were basically playing Wormwood as their primary list, and Una would play in other stuff. It was also really good into like Khador, which was a problem for us then as well, because of Affliction and sprays and whatnot. So we saw Tanith being played there, and then Una 2 dropped, and that same game plan that a lot of people were playing her for was just like better with Una, and then people realized Una was busted as hell, and like Wormwood became the backup list to Una's primary list, and then she got nerfed and Una disappeared. But like Tanith never came back in there anywhere, not for the most part. And I don't really know why, other than maybe she just doesn't straight out solve a problem, like, and is so generalist that you have to sort of build what you want, and nobody like that. The Tanith list that was being played sort of got a lot of attention, mostly because of Brett Fogel was playing it, and a couple others then were also playing it, and it got a lot of traction, and a lot of people were talking about it. And now I feel like I might be the only person talking about Circle some days. So, and I haven't been playing her because I have been going back to Una 2 and a few other things. I'm excited to maybe give her some reps because I'm planning to play Champions. So she's probably going to be one of the Warlocks that I take a look at what she can do. But it's really interesting to see someone with the spell list that she has and some of the abilities she has and some of the things she brings to Circle that we just don't have in other places sort of fall off the map. So that's probably the most notable, most notable of missing things to me. Let's real quick go over and talk about themes. Theme-wise, we have 13 people who are playing Bones of Orboros, 10 in Call of the Wild, 4 Devourer's Hosts, 2 Secret Masters, 2 that are playing no theme. This is lists, by the way, not obviously, and 1 Wild Hunt. So interesting things there is 2 no themes is probably 2 more than I expected. We'll see if we can take a look at those as we scroll down. Bones of Orboros is clearly, Circle players are really high on the world changes right now. They feel strong. They feel like they can play that battle group heavy list again. And for a lot of people, it's been ages since they've felt, especially if you didn't like Bradius, like it's been ages since you've been able to play a world-centric Circle army and feel good about it. And right now you can do that and feel good about it. Call of the Wild 10. I mean, I think both the 2 themes that, I mean, there's a clear line between these 2 themes and the other themes, is that very much the perception of Circle is still that we are a Warbeast faction. You see our 2 Warbeast-centric themes, the themes that give us bonus by taking a bigger and bigger battle group. Both of those are, I mean, if you look at this chart covering at least, that's easily more than 2/3 of the lists. Might be closer to 3/4, and that's pretty telling. I think that definitely tells us, at least perception-wise, where people think Circle is. I think a lot of it is that these are the things people are comfortable with. And I think we see a lot of that in the game, right? Like, Crix is starting to come back, and what are we starting to see, especially now that the Ghost Fleet is sort of, I would say, on the downswing. What we're seeing is Crix looks like what Crix used to look like. You see a lot of Banes, you see a lot of Statixis, you see a lot of spell casting and things like that. Look in Signar, what do we see? We see Stormlances, which were popular in Europe, contrary to what the US thought. Those are sort of coming back a little bit, very slowly. We're seeing a lot of guns still being played, and things like that. Signar's in a little bit of a different place. They're definitely playing some new things. I think in Protectorate, we're starting to see some of the infantry from them. We see, and I think there's a lot of these things where people perceive their faction as being a certain way, and as those ways get better, we see more people gravitating immediately to doing them. So I personally don't necessarily think that Circle's best game is in either of these themes. They're both strong, they're both fine, and they both have their place. I don't always think that just focusing on our battle group is the strongest way we have to play. And I hope, as an aside, I also hope that as Mark III evolves, as we get to our Tharn CID and a few other CIDs, one of the things that I've really felt like we need, and I'll be very curious to see where this Legion CID goes, because I think is what might indicate to me some possibilities. But I think one of the promises is a little strong. One of the things that was discussed with Mark III's rollout was a little bit of the notion that Warjacks kind of needed to come up, and Warbeasts probably needed to come down a little bit. But at the same time, that with Warbeasts coming down, that meant that Horde's infantry could come up. And we didn't really see a lot of that initially, and we've seen battle engines come up, and they're sort of like living in that space for a lot of factions. You see a lot of Throne of Everblights, you see Fulcrums, you see Siege Animantrax for sure, and you see some of those in War Machine as well, or not that specific one, but they're battle engines. And some of the infantry is definitely improved. If you look, Scorn is actually playing a pretty significant amount of infantry. But if you look in Legion, you look in Circle, you look in Mostly those two. You're still not, you're starting to see some of the infantry, but I think you could see a lot more of it. And in Circle, you're even less. You're starting to see the infantry. I mean, these numbers sort of show that it's a lot less, but it, you know, like I think there's room for it to do more. And I think that maybe that needs to be a theme by theme basis, right? Like I'm pretty okay with Call and Bones being good themes. I'd love to see Devourers, Host, Wild Hunt, Secret Masters be able to not just need beasts to get the heavy lifting done. So anyways, that's an aside. We'll see where that goes as the addition continues. I actually do think already that in some lists, in some cases, you can do that, but as it were. So there's a whole list here of like what is being played a lot. Just gonna sort of touch on some of the first things, but we see a lot of the things we expect, especially given these themes: Black-Cloud Wayfarers, Shifting Stones, Stone Shapers, Scarsfell's Griffins, Wold Wardens, Wold Weirds, Wold Whites, Goraxes, and Purebloods. No Wold Watchers, Mannequins, and that covers all the like double-digit entries. No surprises there, right? If you look at the themes being played, you look at the casters being played, you expect to see a lot of Scarsfell's Griffins. You're expecting to see Shifting Stones in basically both of our major themes being played. The two Black-Clad solos, no surprise. The Wold War Beasts, again, no surprise. Purebloods are still pretty popular for a lot of people. Gorax, Silvernix Primal, so you're going to see those. You see Megalith is pretty well represented here. The Druid Wilder, Feral. Ravagers are decently well represented. See a few Getorixes, a few Fulcrums, a few more Lord of the Feast than I expected. And then things start to break down. So again, sort of highlighting what I was saying, we don't see a lot of our infantry up here. We see like I said, 6 units of Ravagers, and I know 2 of those, probably it's 3 players playing 2 units. We see the next one down is Bloodweavers. We see 4 instances of those. We see 4 Druids units, which is more than most people would imagine, would think, but you know, still pretty low. We still see a decent number of Sentry Stones, of course. And then it starts getting real thin. 3 units of Wolf Riders, 2 of which I'm responsible for, or Max Wolf Riders. There's a Min that I saw floating around here too. And then it tapers off pretty hard after that. So, yeah, trying to see if there's any. There is one instance of Feral Valkyries. I think that's cool. Swamp Shamblers, very cool. 1 Moonhound, again, very cool. I see 1 unit of Mistriders. I think we may see more of them if people start unlocking Secret Masters a little bit more. Adalia and Scarith. Bogtruck and Mistbeaker I expect to see more of in the future. I think somebody other than me brought Linus and Adrea. Nope, just me. Okay. Anyways, you can look through. There's some interesting things there. I don't know if you told somebody who played Mark II that there are only 5 Warpwolf Stalkers, they'd probably fall out of their chair. Or that there were the same number of Warpwolf Stalkers as Woldraths, but you know, that is what it is. All right, so like I said, I'm not going to really go over a lot of these other statistics. Feel free to do that. There's some interesting stuff in there. I am going to try. I'm just going to sort of. It's going to take me a minute, but I'm going to kind of slowly work my way through a few of these lists. So. I just want to throw this out there, but the team A Fine Rosé is actually a team entirely of Privateer Press employees who are just going for fun, led by Mr. Pagani, I would imagine. Who, I mean, he is there, but I'm assuming he's also the captain. So I'm super pumped to see them there. So a little shout out to them. We'll just sort of work our way through. We've got, and then I think these are sort of alphabetically, so I'm just gonna kind of touch on what we see. We see first, the first circle list shows up from Battle Driven. One of their players, Aaron, is playing Unitu and Bradigus, which I think is an interesting pairing for sure, especially the way he did. Una's in Call, Bradigus is in. Actually, Bradigus is in Secret Masters. He's the one player because he's brought Brune and Lug, which is interesting because Brune is one of the best ways to make sure your caster's not going to get assassinated because of sack pawn. So you can sack to Brune, and he has his like impervious flesh spell, so he one less die, and then on top of it he can transfer to Lug, who you can then I don't think the Shifting Stones heal him anymore, but you know, he can be healed by Brune later if he needs to be. But yeah, that's going to keep you, it's like, you know, another transfer source that Bradius doesn't have to pay for. So that's interesting. Unatu, we see 6 Griffins, a Pureblood, a pair of Goraxes, and he brought Dolly and Scarith there. Another interesting thing, I'll be interested to see how this does. I don't necessarily directly see the synergies there, but it is a standalone thing that he can put out in another place. Gives him another spray. Yeah, I wouldn't be the direction I would go, but it's really interesting, and I'm really glad to see people sort of thinking outside the box with what they're bringing in their call lists. Okay. And then when we go to the Beast Handlers, we have Blake, and he brought Baldur 2 and Unatu. And the Unatu list, I think this is actually a carbon copy of, I'm going to say Thomas from Poland's list, because I can't say it the correct Polish way, but he's got 7 Griffins, 2 Purebloods, 2 Goraxes, and then 2 Blackclouds, a Wilder, and Shifting Stones. And then he's pairing that with Baldur 2, pair of Woldraths, Megalith, and support list. You got a couple pretty tough questions here. Baldur's going to play defense, Una's going to play offense, and that's how it's going to be. I think Baldur 2 Unatu is a very strong pairing right now. There's definitely no doubt about it. So I'm glad to see it. Yeah, good to see Cassie in the chat as well. Always glad to have somebody in there, especially now that I'm not doing them live as often. So yeah, I don't have a ton to say about this pairing. I don't think there's any surprises here. I think this is, if you have a list that can't deal with Baldur and he feels like, you can drop it, Baldur's going to be the right answer. Otherwise, if he feels like he's got to go get in there and play offense, you're going to see Una. Purebloods are where the Hand of Fate's going to be going most of the game. The only thing I will say about this particular approach to the pairing is that you have to be very careful on scenario because you don't have a lot of elements that can branch out from your battle group. So you got to be very careful. Baldur list is going to be very susceptible. If you lose a Woldrath, it's going to be, you really better hope that you got a lot of work before that happened, or you're able to come back from that. So that's just sort of some quick analysis on that. Bob and the Not Bobs did not play Circle. Boo to them. No good, Bob. Eric Mac Davis also brought him a Baldur 2 and an Una 2. His Baldur list, he went with the single Woldrath, some heavies, a Watcher, some lights. Again, very battle group centric. Made sure to bring Bone Shapers. And he, I think, wins the record for the most Scarsfield's Griffins. He has 10 and 1 Pureblood and a Gorax. That list will crack armor, and Khador can't handle it. Khador armor, like, that is probably one of the best answers, and I know that from seeing his comments on the Facebook group, this is a huge problem where he plays, and that Una list, if you want to play like Harkovich or Karchev or something like that, he's going to be windmill slamming that Una 2 list down, and you're not going to have a good time. I personally don't really like the Una list. It's a little heavy on the Griffins. I feel like you're probably asking Baldur to have to play into a lot more matchups with a pairing like this than I like to. But I think it's still, like I said, Baldur 2 and 2 is still a strong pairing. In the chat, one of the comments is that the pairing doesn't seem good against Ghost Fleet / heavy infantry spam, and I'm assuming we're talking about the Baldur 2 Una 2 pairing. I don't particularly like the double Woldrath build. I think I'm not a huge fan of things that are massive gear checks. I like to have some ability to play through through many situations, basically. And one of the results of that is, like, the Woldrath build is if you can't deal with it, you're screwed. Something to throw out there, though, is Baldur 2 is actually a fantastic drop in general into Ghostly, because Crevasse does have RFP. And with something like Megalith, or if you have Megalith and a Warden, you can Geomancy your Crevasses out there and make sure, you know, it's range 8, and then you get a small base model that you can kill, and then a spray off of that. So it's 8, about 9 with the base, and then another 6. So you can really get 15 inches from wherever you can put that model to start removing the infantry. And with that, like, the Woldrath is basically unkillable by that list, because Denny can't debuff it other than her feet. So Baldur, surprisingly enough, you wouldn't think that bringing a bunch of wolves into a match against Denegra is a good against Crix is a good idea, but it does hold up pretty well because of the combination of Sacred Ward and Crevasse. Pretty well. I do think as the Baldur player, you're still the person who's going to have to really know how to play the matchup. But I think that it definitely is a playable game. The one thing, if you are playing that into Denegra Ghostfleet, you have to absolutely be careful of is the fact that Baldur himself is actually relatively killable. If you can get to a hill, get to a hill. Make sure that he has the Roots of the Earth cast on him. Make sure you're camping pretty sufficiently. Make sure you feed at the right time, things like that, or it's going to be pretty awkward for him. You can probably keep him decently safe with the rock wall or with terrain from like getting spells thrown at him, but if you play the list, definitely play it against a Ghost Fleet list and see how it goes. Heavy infantry spam, it depends a lot. Baldur can play into some infantry. It's not really about killing them. It's about the infantry has to be able to actually hurt Baldur's army. And a lot of it is just not going to do enough. I personally prefer, I like the build, that I got from one of our other watchers. I mentioned his Una list, but I like the Baldur list he played at Polish Masters better with a Fulcrum in there, because you can still get the Fulcrum up to armor 22, and it gives you a lot more flexibility in your list, in my opinion. Anyways, that's all of the circle for that team. We have a team from Madison area. This is our one lone Wormwood player. He paired it with Baldur 2. Interesting pair. He's got a lot of duplicated stuff. They're both in Bones of Orboros. He's using the Bone Grinders as his minion unit so that he brings some souls along. He's got a Mist Speaker in there for some extra Isle of Sight. And he's got Fulcrum. Personally, not my favorite with Wormwood. I think you can make it work, though. I just don't like that the feat doesn't help protect it. But otherwise, Crystal Shadows is actually a really good spell for it. Baldur 2 again. This one does not play a Woldrath. It's got 2 Wardens, 2 Guardians, and Megalith, so this is a heavy War Beast-centric battle group. He's got Mannequins, so he's got a lot of sprays still, things like that, I think. It's another interesting approach I think is viable with Baldur. I think it makes you a little bit weaker, makes Baldur weaker in the Crix matchup, but I would guess seeing this pairing, he's probably playing Wormwood into Crix, or planning to. Florida meta, there's a list from their alternate Kurt. There's 2 lists here. They're pretty bizarre. So I'm sort of not positive how serious he is. I have talked to him before, but I haven't had a chance to ask him about these lists. So if I get a chance to, I may. He's got Baldur 1 in Secret Masters. He's got Baldur 2 in Call of the Wild. Baldur 2's got a Storm Raptor on Una 1. Some very light battle group otherwise. Fellow Valkyries. And then Baldur 1 only has a Woldrath in the battle group. He's got the full suite of Blackclads. He's got Wrong Eye and Snapjaw, 2 units of Druids, and some Swamp Shamblers. these lists may work. I actually like Secret Masters with Baldur 1 a lot with the Woldrath and with Druids. I think is very strong. I don't know how I feel about a Woldrath only battle group. That list I actually think is really interesting and compelling. I'd be interested to see like what it may look like to play. The Baldur 2 list, I don't know. That looks a little trolly to me, but you know, Tom Kwan played something very similar and actually had a pretty solid amount of success doing so. And you know, so maybe there's something to it. It is one of the ways you can keep a Storm Raptor pretty survivable, and it can ignore a lot of things with Bird's Eye. So maybe, but I'm not going to go any more detail on that one because it's he's playing as an alternate, and so it makes it sort of tough to say like if they just put it in for just in case and figured whatever, or if he's been playing a lot. So if I find out more, I'll report back on that. But Florida's B Squad didn't bring any circle. The Gresham Gravy Train brought no circle. Hey, watch this. Nope, I'm not going to. You didn't bring any circle. Land of Ice and Snow, no circle. I think they're from Minnesota. LOS2 Wargame has two guys who became quote-unquote famous playing circle, not playing circle, so we won't talk anymore about them. Nobody from Texas is playing circle. Then we get the Malcontents, which is... I was going to say this is mostly a Minnesota team, but I think Matt Luss might be the only guy actually from Minnesota on this team. So they have two circle players, one of which is the good professor. He opted to bring Kaya 3 and Bradigus. He's playing Gord's. I think this is exactly Gord's Kaya 3 list. It's very close if it's not. With 4 Shadowhorns, 5 Scarsfells, Paragor X's, and some support. And then he's got Bradigus with 4 Whites, 4 Wardens, 2 Watchers, and support. The only thing with this list is I don't actually know when he's dropping which. I feel like they kind of overlap a little bit in what they can do. I suppose if you can't handle defense, he's going to go with Kaya 3. And if he can, he's going to go with Bradigus. And in both cases, the numbers they can put out are going to be a lot higher than they normally would be for beasts like that. So pretty interesting lists. The Kaya 3 list, like I said, I think it's Gord's list. I liked it then. The 4 Shadowhorns just seems like a nightmare for somebody to figure out what you're actually going to do. The reposition is really strong, of course. You get up the table real fast with this list because Griffins run 14. And Shadowhorns, one of the things they can do is walk 6, jump 5, reposition 3. So they also get up the table 14 inches. And then Kaya can just charge something. So she's 10. Like, your army's up there fast. Bradigus, we talked a bit about before, but you know he's got a feat for an alpha. Wold Wardens have decent geomancyable spells with him. Wold Whites can hit way above their class, so can Wardens. I like a Guardian with Bradigus. That's what I've played recently, but there's a lot of good variation on him that I think is strong. And then their other circle player brought kind of the 2 defensive approaches. He brought Kruger 2 in a list very similar to what I'm playing. Only real difference here is he doesn't have as many support solos in favor of having Sentry Stone and Mannequins. I have the other unit Shifting Stones, another Stone Shaper, and then Linus and Adrea. Otherwise our lists are actually the same. So I actually really like the list. I've played this version. Slightly different. I dropped one of the Wayfarers for the second unit of Shifting Stones. But otherwise I've played this version as well. I think it's... and you can fit in a... he didn't do it, but you can, and he should have, but you can fit a Swamp Gobbler Chef in there. I just think you should. Probably both of his lists are 1 point down, and he should have done that. Just having one more solo is never a bad thing, even if it doesn't do anything else. So the list is Baldur 2. He went Woldrath, Parawatchers, a Megalith, the full contingent of solos with Fulcrum and Shifting Stones. I like this build quite a bit. This is very similar to the one I was mentioning before. I like this approach quite a lot, like I said. These lists are going to play very defensive compared to Matt's offense. Rich is playing defense. And don't get me wrong, Kruger is going to put a lot of firepower down when he wants to, but these lists are a little bit more defensively focused in general. And part of me feels like these players would be better if they just like shifted their lists one, or their list would be better if they did that. but you know, this is what they played and they probably have a different way to approach that than I do. And with 2 of them there, it gets pretty interesting with how, you know, how the team format can work for them. So good luck to them unless they play against my team. And then good luck to them anyways, but you know, we want to win. Jeff from Minnestakes, and I'm going to assume this is a Minnesota team, has is this the most out of list out of theme? It is most out of list out of theme, and Kaya 3 in call. So Kaya 3 with Wrong Eye Snapdraw. He's got Croak Raiders. That's the only interesting thing to me. I guess he wanted a unit for scoring purposes. Outside of the shifting stones, Croak Raiders pretty okay now with the changes. I think Kaya gives him Fog of War. Really, that's about it though. I don't really personally love that inclusion, but Wrong Eye Snapdraw really take that, defense skew and ratchet it way up. Most our list out of theme. So I'm gonna let the people who are watching this in on a little secret. I don't know. There's 2 most our list out of theme. This one is not one of them. I don't really know what he's aiming to do at this list, actually. I guess he's going to use it. He still has the assassination potential, but he doesn't really have the assassination like offensive output because of the changes. Seeing Eilish here makes me think he's playing this into Crix along with the Mistriders. So I guess he can do a decent amount of work into like a Crix army. Between you can use the wolves to ambush and then use them to put Mosar in interesting places. He still has the Wild Argus Animus for the assassination, but like he basically went out of theme to take Eilish and Hutchuk, which he'd normally only get 1, and to take Wolves Vorgros. So I feel like I see a lot of potential here, but in my opinion, the list could be a little bit more refined. But I'll be interested to see, you know, how he does, and if there's something. There's certainly a possibility of there being something there that I've missed. So, but that's okay. All right, Misfits. We've got a circle player. He brought Bradigus Una 2. This is one of the other Una 2 Devourers host lists. This Bradigus list has got Guardian, Whites, Wardens, Watchers. He's going to be able to crack a lot of armor with that list. His Una list only has 4 Scarsfells, but he's got Death Wolves, he's got 2 Bloodweavers, he's got 2 Ravagers with UAs, he's got a White Mane for free, Shifting Stones, and the Death Wolves. That's a list that's going to do a lot of work in infantry. The Scarsfells have RFP, the Bloodweavers have RFP, he's got the Death Wolves that have the corpses, he's going to be able to Hand of Fated Ravagers kill a lot of infantry, Hand of Fated Death Wolves do a lot of everything, etc. So it's an interesting pair. Una's going to play into a lot of games, I think, and then Bradius is going to be sort of the hammer. None there. Dan from Nonokrian Order is he's the Kruger 1 player, bringing the Devourers host hashtag Kruger Hill. Still a good list in my opinion. I think it's possibly only getting better right now. The only exception being that I don't necessarily know that you need Gale Winds right now, and if you don't need Gale Winds, you might be able to build this list with somebody else and have a different type of advantage in your game. He brought Chromac 1 to pair with it and Call the Wild, and this is a pretty fascinating approach. He has 3 Feral Warpwolves, Getorix, a Pureblood, a Wild Argus, and then he took a Druid Wilder and 2 Wayfarers for free, and he got in the swamp. He took the Swamp Gobbers, which cost him a 4th free card. 3 Ferals is really interesting, and he's got a lot of good places to be able to put his armor buff. He's got 3 different beasts that are speed 8, which can be so the speed 8 they threaten without Hunter's Mark. They're going to be threatening 11 inches. They have 11-inch tramples, which actually is not irrelevant, and he's got up to 12-inch threat there. That goes up to 15 with Warpath potentially. He's got plenty of access to Primal, so it's going to be pretty hard to remove that from the list. Wild Argus Animus, always useful. Getorix is a great piece with Chromac 1. It's an interesting list. I'll have to ask Dan a little bit more about it because he usually has an interesting approach to how he likes to pair his lists. So I'll be curious to see what that does. I expect that he mostly likes playing his Kruger one list. One beer short of a 6-pack is also one circle player short of interesting. Ryan from the Ozark Mountain Mechs. He's got Bradigus and Kruger 2. So this is 2 bones lists with this is sort of doing what I suggested the other team could do, where Bradigus is the hammer and Kruger's the defensive, the anvil, if you will, the defensive piece. He's playing a similar list to the other ones we've seen, only he has a pair of Gallows Groves and another Woldweird instead of the Fulcrum. I like the Fulcrum better. It synergizes well with a lot there. We've talked a lot about these types of pairings. I don't think there's a lot there to hit on. Yeah. Ride a 4 horsemen on a club soda. No circle. Who cares? The SEC is probably filing some nonsense injunction. Dave here is our Grail player that's in the Wild Hunt. So it's interesting to see this. I actually like his approach here. He's got a pair. He's got 2. Unfortunately, I wish they were both max units, but he's got 2 units of Skinwalkers, 1 min, 1 max, both with the attachment. He's got a full unit of Reeves. He's got a full unit of Wolves, both with attachments. He's got Morag. He's got 3 Werewolves, and then he's got a Feral and a Pureblood to fill out the battle group. And I think that's let's see, that's 34 points, so a little over his battle group points. I really like the list. I really like seeing the Skinwalkers with him. I think that they're I think this is one of the places where they can shine. They get very accurate. They are very survivable on their own, and you can deliver them to get them stuck in. And I think this is interesting. I'll really be interested to see where this goes. Chromac 2, this is his armor cracking list. The only thing weird here is he's got Pharaoh Brigands, and again, I guess he's another player who felt like bringing a unit really helped him spread out, and I can see some justification in doing that. I have a hard time playing Chromac 2 and not maximizing on that battle group for the feat, but that's just me. Swamp Gobbers don't have a circle player. Canada, too cold for them to play circle. Team Pegasus Prime has a circle player. This is the other Mosar list out of theme and Bradigus list. Bradigus looking pretty similar to what we've been talking about. It's going to crack the armors. Mosar list, this one's out of theme. He's got a minion of Wolf Riders, he's got Blood Trackers, he's got Druids, and then he's got a Wild Argus, Woldweirds, Pureblood, and a Moonhound. He's looking to kill somebody. If they don't actually know what Mosar can do, they're dead. He's also got the RP and other stuff. This can kill a decent amount of infantry, but I don't be surprised if you see him drop Mosar, go Blood Trackers, Prayer Caster, Wolf Riders run directly at his caster. He proceeds to cast Sands of Fate. What is it? Doppler Bark. And if he needs to remove your stealth, he's going to cast the Moonhound's Animus as well. I think it's Hunting Howls is what that's called now. And then he's going to put as many Blood Tracker, Woldweird, and Pureblood attacks on you as he can find. That's what I think that list is going to do most of the game. And to be honest, a lot of people aren't going to see it coming, and they're going to be dead. So, seems cool. Terminus and the Terminus and Friends Variety Hour does not have any circle variety. We don't care. Top of 2, grab a brew. You better, because you don't have any circle. Travis says we need a team name. Has Celeste playing her Chromac 1 and Bradigus lists. Bradigus is looking pretty similar to everything else we've seen, other than she has the Fulcrum, which with Bradigus, it doesn't do... The thing it does is provide you some infantry removal that you wouldn't have otherwise had, and also helps him with his Fury Load. So she also has some old weird. So there's some interesting differences in the list. But she still has the threat. She probably has a better assassination game, a little worse attrition game. Chromac 1 is Warpwolf Zoo here, basically. Feral, Getorix, Pureblood, Stalker, Wild Argus, Gorax, Wilder. She's got Lanissa and Blackclad, so she's definitely getting her Hunter's Mark off. Lord of the Feast for some extra scenario and shifting zones. the no spells from Chromac is very, very relevant still right now. And then, you know, I think with some good play, you can actually get a solid amount of work out of the four heavies here. Trolls from Felix's Basement is my team. And I've talked a decent amount about my list, but I'm pairing Kruger 2 and Una 2. I'm the other Devourer's Host player, and I keep liking my Una 2 list because I think it has game into almost everything. So I'm not going to go into it more than that. You Can't Ban Awesome is, I believe, our final circle entry from Justice. He brought Chromac 2 and Mosar 1, so he's the third Mosar player. He's got Mosar and Devourer's Host, which I do like better, because I think it's going to be a little more stable. I would have tried to find room for a unit of Bloodweavers personally, so that I can make more use out of and a Wild Argus, because I like that about Mosar. Looks like he's looking to play into infantry lists here, Para Ravagers, Wolf Riders, and so forth. Pardon me. Chromac 2, Para Purebloods, Generics, Feral, Stalker. He's looking to crack some armor there. And your mom doesn't play Circle. So that was a lot of circle lists. I think there's some pretty interesting stuff there. I think there's a lot of room still yet for Circle to really evolve. I think we're seeing really the first post full theme availability meta that's out there, combined with Crix's Ghost Fleet and Denegar 1 tone downs coming, and so I think this is only the beginning of what we're going to see. Like I said, I think it would make more sense for us to see more Tanith return to the fold. I think some people in here are playing things they're comfortable with, and that's fine. I think some people are certainly trying some different things. Some of those Mosar builds, definitely interesting in how they're going to approach the game. A couple of them probably hope that their opponents didn't watch this video. I think that there's just a lot of potential for where we can go from here. Like I said, I think I do think we will probably see a lot of Bones of Orboros and Call of the Wild for the foreseeable future, which I think is a bit unfortunate. I'd like to see people really trying the infantry-based themes a little bit more, as I think that there's more to them than people are giving credit for. I also think too many people are too concerned about too many of our trouble matchups in their list construction is what I see. A lot of those War Beast themes indicates that people are worried they're going to run into a lot of Warjacks and a lot of armor, and they may, but I don't know that you need two lists for that. So that's probably about all that I have on this. This is, I'm hitting it about an hour here. So, as always, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a message. I didn't actually get too many in the live chat, but hopefully you were able to enjoy the little bits that you were there for. So yeah, so that's what you can look forward to the ATC. I think I have another episode that I recorded coming out in the next day or two talking about how to pair for an event like this. So there's some interesting stuff. You can see how that may line up with what I talk about here. If there's some specific things that come out of this, we may do future episodes. I will probably make an effort to revisit Bradigus at some time in the near future, and maybe a couple of the other things. I am already starting to revisit some of the things, especially things like Una, where errata has changed what she does. And I want to start kind of doing that. There are a couple of things I still haven't gotten to from the beginning of Mark III with my show. I will try to do those as well. I think it's Kaya 3 and the Woldstalkers unit, so we'll see if we can get to those. But yeah, anyways, if you like what you see and you enjoy the show, try to hit the subscribe button or the thumbs up button, to show that you like the episode. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them on the episode. I can always try to answer them. I'm usually on, you can catch me on Facebook, Twitter, or that's pretty much about it. I suppose it's relevant. Again, like I said, if there's any questions, let me know. I'll be really interested to see how ATC goes. I'll probably try to do an episode after the event to talk through A little bit might be battle reports, might be just overall sense of how it goes, might be a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. We'll see. I'm going to try to continue to release some content next week and the rest of this week as well. So like I said, if you don't want to miss it, make sure you hit the subscribe button. As always, quick shout out, Griffin's Roost Painting. Still paints gorgeous models for me, for others. So check out her work, griffinsroostpainting.com, Griffin's Roost on Facebook. And finally, one other small thing that I'm working on, it's not really gotten very far, but let me know if this is of interest to you, is I'm working on getting a Full Circle Discord going as another way to sort of, another place to generate chat and stuff. I've considered getting a Facebook either group or page. I don't really remember which is better, going for the show as well. And so if you think that's interesting, again, shoot me a message or hit me up and let me know what you think of that. And real quick, I got one more question, and then we're going to call a wrap on the show because of how long I've been out here. But what are my thoughts on Roche and Brine with Kruger 2? Very interesting. Roche and Brine can fit into any of the themes. You can bring Primal with him if you want to. And I think I'd have to sit down and do the math on it, but I'm pretty sure that's the longest potential like melee threat we could throw at something. You're looking at, let's see, what is it? Brine is speed 5, I believe. So you can get, what do you get, an extra 5-inch move out of him, and then doesn't he charge farther too? I'm blanking a little bit. So if he moves 5, and then he can charge 8, 1-inch melee is 9. So plus that original 5 is 14, plus TK to 16, plus potentially another TK to 18, plus Hunter's Mark. You're talking about a potential for a 20-inch threat range. So that's going to let you kill a caster or something else from, and it's not necessarily in a straight line, from a long ways away potentially. But I do think that if people know what he does and can position themselves to be safe, that you might have trouble. But for 15 points, he can trade into other heavies really well too. So I think it's interesting. I certainly think it's interesting. I don't know that I like giving up. Well, the one other thing that he does do is he's 15 points, which means any of the themes that need 60 points of stuff for 3 free cards could fit him in, and exactly 60 points. So I don't know, could be something there. I think it's interesting. I think if you're gonna play it, you're gonna play it with Kruger 2, or it has to be one of our casters that doesn't really care about minion stuff too much, I'd say. So I think you're looking at Kruger 2, Wormwood, Tanith, and maybe Mosar. Maybe. Probably Kruger 2 might be the best out of those though. So but if you play it, let me know how it goes. Anyways, thanks again for watching. Hit the subscribe button. Check out all my other episodes that have been posted. Check out the ones that will post the rest of the week. And thanks again for watching.